The first time it happened, I thought I was dreaming. I saw myself, another version of me, through a shimmering curtain of light. He looked panicked, mouthing words I couldn't hear before vanishing. I chalked it up to stress from long hours in the lab. If only I'd known then what horrors awaited. My name is Dr. Elias Quantum, and I'm a physicist specializing in parallel universe theory. For years, my team and I had been working on the Q portal, a device we hoped could peer into alternate realities. We never imagined we'd succeed in such a horrifying way. It was a Tuesday when everything changed. I remember because Tuesdays were always Chinese takeout night with my wife, Sarah. I was running late at the lab, tweaking some final calculations before our big test the next day. Just one more adjustment, I muttered, fingers flying over the keyboard. The holographic display flickered, numbers and equations swirling in the air around me. That's when I saw it again, that shimmering curtain. But this time, it didn't fade. My doppelganger stumbled through, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. "You have to stop," he gasped, grabbing my arm. His touch was ice cold. "The portal, it's not what you think. They're coming." Before I could respond, he convulsed and disappeared in a flash of light, leaving behind only a smear of blood on my lab coat. I stared at the stain, my mind reeling. This was impossible. We hadn't even activated the Q portal yet. Had we? I rushed to check the device. All systems were normal, powered down as we'd left them. But as I approached, I felt a strange tingling, like static electricity crawling over my skin. The air around the portal shimmered faintly. My phone buzzed. "Sarah. Elias, where are you? Dinner's getting cold." "I'm on my way," I lied, unable to tear my eyes from the Q portal. "Just wrapping up." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my other self's terrified face. Who was coming? What had he seen? The next morning, I arrived at the lab early, determined to find answers. My team trickled in, excited for the big day. I said nothing about the previous night's encounter. They'd think I was crazy. As we initiated the startup sequence, a sense of dread settled in my stomach. The Q portal hummed to life, its circular frame filling with swirling energy. We all held our breath, watching the monitors. "Signal acquired," Dr. Chen announced. "We're receiving data from somewhere else." The image on the main screen stabilized. We saw a lab almost identical to ours, but empty and in disarray. Papers scattered across the floor, chairs overturned. And on the far wall, a dark stain that looked disturbingly like blood. "What happened there?" whispered Jessica, our youngest team member. Before anyone could answer, a figure stumbled into view. It was me again, but older, haggard. He looked directly at the camera, terror etched on his face. "Listen to me," he rasped. "Shut it down. Shut it all down. They're using the portals to cross over. You don't know what you've unleashed." Static consumed the image. When it cleared, the lab was empty again. What the hell was that? Dr. Reeves demanded. I opened my mouth to explain, but a violent tremor shook the building. Warning alarms blared as the Q portal's energy levels spiked. "Shut it down," I yelled, echoing my other self's warning. But it was too late. The portal's swirling vortex expanded, bursting from its frame. Wind howled as papers and equipment were sucked toward the growing anomaly. And in the chaotic maelstrom, I saw things. Shadowy, writhing shapes with too many limbs and eyes that glowed with malevolent intelligence. "Run!" I screamed, grabbing Jessica's arm and pulling her toward the exit. The others followed, but Dr. Chin tripped. I turned back in time to see a tendril of darkness wrap around his ankle, dragging him into the vortex. His scream cut off abruptly as he vanished. We sealed the blast doors, but I knew it wouldn't hold them for long. Whatever we'd unleashed was coming, and it was hungry. "What do we do?" Jessica sobbed. I thought of Sarah, blissfully unaware at home. Of the billions of people going about their lives, not knowing the horror that now existed in our world. My other selves had tried to warn me, but I hadn't listened. Now it was up to me to fix this. "We fight," I said, surprised by the steel in my voice. "We find a way to close the portal and send those things back where they came from." Dr. Reeves nodded grimly. "How?" I wish I had a better answer, but the truth was, I had no idea. We were scientists, not soldiers. But as I heard an ominous creaking from the blast doors, I knew we were out of time. "First, we survive," I said. "Then we figure out the rest." We ran deeper into the facility, sealing doors behind us. But I could feel them coming, an oppressive weight of wrongness pressing against reality itself. The lights flickered, casting twisted shadows on the walls. In the distance, I heard screams both human and decidedly not. As we barricaded ourselves in the auxiliary control room, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. How many other versions of me were facing similar horrors across the multiverse? How many had already fallen? I powered up the emergency systems, searching desperately for a solution. On one screen, I saw security camera footage of the main lab. The portal had grown, consuming nearly half the room. And emerging from its swirling depths were nightmares made flesh. "Oh God," Jessica whimpered. "What are those things?" I had no answer. Their forms seemed to shift and change, defying the laws of physics and sanity alike. But their intent was clear as they tore through the lab, searching, hunting. A pounding on the door made us all jump. "Let me in," a voice cried. "Please." I recognized that voice. It was mine. "Don't," Dr. Reeves hissed. It could be a trick. But I was already moving toward the door. I had to know. Had to see. As I reached for the handle, a section of wall beside me suddenly bulged inward, metal groaning. Something on the other side was trying to get in. Something strong. The pounding on the door grew more frantic. "Please." "They're right behind me." I hesitated, torn between self-preservation and the desperate need to understand what was happening. In that moment of indecision, the choice was made for me. The wall exploded inward in a shower of twisted metal and sparks. And through the breach poured a writhing mass of tentacles and eyes, all focused on us with predatory intensity. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on a cable. As I fell, I saw the door burst open, revealing myself. Our eyes met for a split second, mutual horror reflected. Then the lights went out, plunging us into darkness filled with inhuman shrieks and the sickening sound of tearing flesh. In that moment, I knew with terrible certainty that our universe was no longer just our own. The barriers between realities had been shattered, and what lay beyond was nightmare itself. And somewhere, in the infinite expanse of the multiverse, another version of me was about to make the same mistakes, unleashing horrors beyond imagination. The cycle would continue, reality fracturing again and again, until, as the darkness consumed us, I felt something cold and slimy wrap around my ankle. I kicked frantically, my hand fumbling for anything to use as a weapon. My fingers closed around a broken piece of metal, and I swung blindly. A high-pitched shriek pierced the air as I connected with something soft. The tendril released me, and I scrambled to my feet. In the faint emergency lighting, I saw Jessica huddled in a corner, her eyes wide with terror. Dr. Reeves was nowhere to be seen. "We have to move," I shouted, grabbing Jessica's arm. We stumbled through the breach in the wall, into a corridor that seemed to twist and shift before my eyes. Reality itself was unraveling. As we ran, I caught glimpses of other versions of myself fleeing parallel horrors. Some were ahead of us, some behind, all trapped in this nightmarish labyrinth between worlds. I tried not to think about what had happened to the me who had been pounding on the door. We turned a corner and froze. The corridor ahead was wrong. It stretched impossibly long, the walls pulsing with an otherworldly light. And at the far end, a figure stood waiting. It looked like me, but older, ravaged by time and cosmic horrors. "You shouldn't have come this way," my doppelganger said, his voice echoing strangely. "This path leads only to madness." Before I could respond, a wave of shadow engulfed him. When it receded, he was gone. In his place stood a mirror, its surface rippling like black water. Jessica whimpered beside me. "What's happening?" I wished I had an answer. The laws of physics were breaking down, reality fracturing into a kaleidoscope of terror. And through every crack, those things were pouring in. A scuttling sound behind us spurred us forward. As we approached the mirror, I saw our reflections change. One moment we were ourselves, the next, monstrous hybrids of flesh and machine. Then withered husks, ancient beyond imagining. "Don't look," I warned Jessica. "Just run." We plunged through the mirror's surface, emerging into a vast chamber. The walls were lined with countless portals, each showing a different version of our world. Some were paradises, others post-apocalyptic wastelands. And in far too many, I saw those shadowy aberrations wreaking havoc. In the center of the chamber stood a massive, pulsing crystal. It hummed with power, casting fractal patterns of light across the room. I knew instinctively that this was the nexus, the point where all realities converged. "Elias," a familiar voice called. I turned to see Sarah stumbling out of one of the portals. But as she ran towards me, her form flickered, cycling through different versions of herself. "Stay back," I warned, but it was too late. As soon as she touched me, I felt a jolt of energy. Memories that weren't mine flooded my mind, countless lives lived across the multiverse. I saw myself as a conquering tyrant, a messianic figure, a gibbering madman. The weight of infinite possibilities threatened to crush my sanity. I pulled away, gasping. Sarah's eyes were wide, and I knew she had experienced the same thing. "What have you done?" she whispered. Before I could answer, the crystal pulsed violently. Cracks spread across its surface, and through them, I caught glimpses of something vast and incomprehensible. An entity that existed between realities, feeding on the fear and chaos of countless worlds. We have to destroy it, I realized. It's the only way to stop this. But as I stepped towards the crystal, my path was blocked by another version of myself. This one's eyes glowed with an unearthly light, his lab coat writhing with tentacles. "You can't stop what's coming," he said, his voice overlaid with inhuman frequencies. "The barriers between worlds are falling. Soon, all realities will be one, and the great ones will feast." I felt a surge of revulsion and pity. This version of me had given in, become a puppet for the entities invading our universe. I wouldn't let that happen to me, to us. "You're wrong," I said, hefting the piece of metal I'd used as a weapon earlier. "We'll find a way." As if in response to my defiance, the chamber shuddered. Portals began collapsing, reality folding in on itself. We were running out of time. I turned to Jessica and Sarah. "Get to a portal. Find a safe world if you can." "What about you?" Sarah asked, her form still flickering between realities. I managed a grim smile. "I started this. I have to end it." As they retreated, I faced my corrupted self. We circled each other, the fate of the multiverse hanging in the balance. In that moment, I felt the weight of every version of myself, their hopes and fears, their triumphs and failures. With a roar, I charged forward. My corrupted self lashed out with tentacles, but I ducked under them, driving my makeshift weapon into the crystal. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, a high-pitched whine filling the air. "You fool," my other self shrieked. "You'll doom us all." Maybe he was right. But as the crystal shattered, I felt a moment of perfect clarity. I saw the web of realities stretching into infinity, and our small place within it. I saw the entities that lurked between worlds recoil as their gateway collapsed. The chamber began to disintegrate, Rena reality trying to reassert itself. My corrupted self was pulled screaming into a collapsing portal. All around me, I saw flashes of other worlds, other lives. And in one, I caught a glimpse of Sarah and Jessica emerging into a sunlit lab, safe. As the chaos engulfed me, I felt a sense of peace. Whatever happened next, I had made my choice. I had faced the darkness within myself and within the universe, and I had not flinched. The last thing I saw before everything went white was a figure stepping out of a portal. It was me, or another version of me, looking determined and unafraid. "Your turn," I thought I heard him say. Then the light consumed everything, and I knew no more. I awoke with a start, my heart pounding. The lab was quiet, the Q portal dark and inactive. Had it all been a dream? But as I stood, I felt the weight of infinite lives lived and lost. In my pocket, I found a small crystal shard, humming with otherworldly energy. And I knew that somewhere out there, across the vastness of the multiverse, the battle continued. I may have closed one door, but countless others remained. The nightmare wasn't over. It had only just begun. As I left the lab, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. In every reflection, every shadow, I caught glimpses of other realities bleeding through. And I knew that someday, somehow, those barriers would weaken again. When that day came, I would be ready. For I had seen the horrors that lurked between worlds, and I knew the terrible price of failure. The multiverse may be vast, but in the end, we are all connected. All part of a greater whole. And in that connection lies both our greatest vulnerability and our greatest strength. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I took a deep breath. The world looked the same, but I knew better. Reality was far more fragile and far more wondrous than I had ever imagined. Whatever comes next, whatever horrors or marvels await across the infinite expanse of possibility, I'll face it. For I am Elias Quantum, guardian of the multiverse. And my work has only just begun.